So here we are today on day 4 of 365. It feels like at this point. Day 4 of our conference, and we've got session 2 today. So you've got a double dose of me today. I do apologise. I'm still a bit croaky. I've had bronchitis for 2 months. So today we're going to talk about accessible training and staying relevant in a rapidly changing environment. And because I'm known as a bit of a maverick, at the last minute I've substituted a panel member. So we've got somebody completely new on the panel, just so that we've got a much greater range of not only the roles and expertise that we have, but also in terms of EDI. Put my money where my mouth is, that's what I'm doing here. So, we have here, where's Bill? Not here.
I'm singing for Bill.
You're now Bill. Okay. I tell you what, to make it easier so that I'm not working off of scraps of paper, would you all like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, but please do not expect me to remember who everyone's name is, because I can barely remember my own children's.
Do you want me to go first?
Yes,
then?
please.
Yeah. So it is on the website, but it's not on the sheet. But anyway, so I'm sitting in for Bill. So my name is Tristan. I'm the Data Stewardship Coordinator at the Office of Open Research, which is based at the University of Manchester Library. So I'm coordinating and project managing our kind of initiative on data stewardship at the moment, which is a collaboration between the library's RDM team and the Research Lifecycle Programme. I've been working in open research for 7-8 years now, and before that I did a PhD in political science at Newcastle University.
Next panellist.
Thank you, Kirsty. And hello everyone, I'm Skylar. I'm one academic, a lecturer in international business at the University of Leeds. And I come here not just to share my experience, but also to learn from data experts like you.
Morning, everyone. I'm Manhui Wang from the University of Liverpool. So I'm currently the head of a research IT platform. So we manage the HPC cluster and provide research computing service.
Yeah, Samantha, Ahern, UCL. So my official job title is Senior Digital Research Trainer. In practice, I'm the Education Practice Lead for the Centre for Advanced Research Computing at UCL. One of the things that's on my job title is actually learning journeys for professions. But I am a teaching and learning person. That's what I've done for 20 years. I'm a fellow of the Centre for Online Distance Education at the University of London. I've been on working groups with ALTS, which is the Association for Learning Technology, and produced things like a anti-racist content creation toolkit. I wrote our digital accessibility guidance before we had a full digital accessibility team. And I chair the Software Carpentry Lesson Programmes Governance Committee. So I very much have a key role in determining what is coming, and kind of also not just what is new, but what is existing that needs more support. And I'm not going to get too grumpy with COSEC and not funding the CCP Fortran proposal. There is a need, honest, and I will stop there.
Hi everyone, I'm Beth Montague-Helen. I'm the head of the Library and Information Services team at the Francis Crick Institute, and I did think that I was going to get away with not being on a panel this week. I have not. I've been at the Crick for 2 years. And prior to that, I built the RDM service in the library at the University of Nottingham for the 4 years before that. Before that, I was a bioinformatician as well, so I've kind of dotted around a little bit. But I've done quite a lot of kind of taking people in libraries and teaching them to be RDM professionals. I've also just written a book on EDI in libraries, which has quite a lot of stuff about training and things in it. And if anyone's interested in buying it, then I will tell you the title later.
Okay, perfect. So we've got quite a range of expertise there, and I noticed that obviously what we also seem to have is a lot of people who deliver training. And I know that that might not necessarily be the case across some of the DRI professional pathways, but certainly library services tend to be the people who go out and train people. So represent my people. Thank you very much. Right, so I'm going to go completely off piece, and I'm going to look at the pre-provided questions that we had, and I'm going to work in reverse order. The first question that I would like us to look at is, Can you describe any innovative methods you have used to ensure your training reaches a relevant and diverse audience? Because I think that covers everything. It's like, A, you needed to have identified the audience, B, you need to identify a need, and C, you need to think of new ways of doing that. Beth, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so one of the things that, particularly with library services, that I find is we put the services out and we try and kind of cover all the comms routes and get people to come back to us. But what you nearly always find is that the people who come and say, oh, can you help me with your data? Can I go on this training course? Are people who expect those services to exist already and people who expect that people are going to help them out. So you get an awful lot of middle-class white men because they just expect that there's someone who's going to help them do the thing. What you find is that people who come from minority groups actually are not necessarily looking for that service because often they don't know that there's going to be someone who's going to help them out with that thing. So one of the things that we used to do quite a lot was kind of search out the staff groups that maybe covered disability services or whichever minority groups going on, and specifically target those groups and say, hey, we've got this service, we'd really love it if you came to this training course or came and asked us how to deal with your data, specifically to try and shift that demographic of who we were helping, because otherwise, we're helping the people who possibly don't need the help so much.
And I guess as well, part of that is it's just not that it's about that kind of very, very obvious minority group, right? This is about arts and humanities researchers. This is about that one lone researcher who's doing something completely random that nobody knows about because it's a brand new open research practice and they don't know where they're going to get support for that kind of work from.
I once put on a data carpentry R course and we thought, okay, how are we going to advertise this out? It sort of accidentally ended up on a geography mailing list first, and it's booked out within half an hour because it turns out that those PhD students didn't have someone within the department who was teaching that already, whereas computer science, they've got a million different routes to learn those skills. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Who else on the panel would like to answer that? Address the original question?
Yeah, I can have a go a bit at this. So some of it is that actually the stuff that we do that's bread and butter actually goes on our doctoral training calendar. We're part of that board. But I think part of it is that conversation with the community. So I spent a lot of time, certainly with my software carpentry hat on, talking to the community, and part of that's around engaging the people that look after the lessons and enhancing and developing them, but seeing what people want from the community. Being at RSCon and being at that Back to the Fortran workshop, and that is still very much a live thing and a real need. And there's different needs in there, but also thinking about how we pitch the training and the audiences, so the languages we use and how we describe it and what we do. So I'm going to be a bit sneaky this summer. And we have this Term 3 training programme, and I've put in a programming historian on facial recognition. And I'm going to go through the undergraduate route to get the attention of the arts and humanities and social sciences. Because when I try knocking on their door, they're not entirely sure what I'm talking about. Yep. So I still got to work out how to have that conversation in a way. But then there are things, even around how we teach, which came up last week when I was at the Edinburgh Winter School, that actually the approaches that we take that code along don't work for everybody either. So, and I actually spotted this when I was doing some work with some professionals in September. So rethinking some of what we take as standard practice and tweaking it, and certainly the language around how we talk about things, and pitching it the right way. It's still an ongoing
work in process.
Right.
I can see other panellists nodding vigorously. Would anyone else like to chip in there?
Yeah, I want to share some experience. So basically, I work in research platform team. So based daily, and we deal a lot of inquiry and how to use that, how to use it. So basically, in your daily work, you see a lot of repeated questions, and this is a very good source to just tailor your training. So, for example, and so relate to the research data management, and so our library provide a research data management platform, and the library, and so they will send the user the welcome email, and you can just get access to your storage via this link. But this only works on Windows system. So we need to work out, and because if after first technical question, they won't say, oh, this system is designed as that. But we know this is a way to work with Linux. So we dig out a different way to work with Linux. And so then we just deliver to the user and have a documentation just for the different way how to get access between your Linux machine and the libraries, research data management store, and so this help our users can back up the data via our HPC cluster and the research data storage, and I think that's really just we need just to capture users' need and then just deliver what exactly they want.
Yeah, and I think that's important, isn't it? Is that we've all got those assumptions of how somebody is going to approach this problem. And when you do that learning journey and you think of the different routes that people could have come into doing the work that they're doing, you need to be able to understand the change in the practices that surround that. Anyway, Skylar, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Kirsty. And to be honest, this is a very difficult question for me because I come from business school and have very few experience in delivering accessible training. So it's like asking someone who has never cooked before to make a complex meal.
But in a way, that's the benefit, you see, because then you
Yes,
come
I
in
do.
with a blank slate. You can say, this is the things that we need here.
Yes, Kirsty, yes, definitely. But I do benefit from accessible training, and I'd like to share my experience of how I know nothing about the programming skills benefit from the collaboration. So I benefit from the interdisciplinary collaboration with co-authors and my PhD students. For example, once we got the funding from the industry or from the government, we use the funding to hire PhD students with computer science background. In this way, we can teach our PhD students the business side, and they can mentor us in terms of the machine learning algorithms and the other large language models. So in this way, both of the groups benefit from each other. So the key point, I think, is interdisciplinary collaboration. And I think my PhD journey in Germany also emphasizes this point. So in PhD, like some business school, they do the executive training PhD program. So that's like some consulting companies, like Boston Consulting Group. They send their top managers, the executives, to the business school to learn about the machine learning languages and the large language models. And they also, in return, they provided some funding to the PhD supervisors. So the PhD supervisors can use the funding to hire data experts with computer science background. And in this way, they can mentor each other, like the data experts can mentor the managers in terms of the machine learning algorithms. And the top managers can also help these data experts to know more about the business world and apply their skills to a real business world. And in this way, everyone's happy. The PhD supervisor is happy because he got the funding, he got the research publications, he got everything. And the data experts are happy because they learn better about how to apply their skills to a business world. And the top managers are happy because they learned how to use the machine learning algorithms in the daily work.
I think that's really important as well, because that's one of the things that institutions are looking towards now when we've, all got a bit of a financial squeeze on us, is that one of the things that we can probably do is take some lessons and patterns and methods from business so that you can, A, cut a few costs because you're going to be working more efficiently, but also that you're actually addressing the needs of people when they go out into the real world. So this is not only about the students, it's about having that civic link between what we provide as institutions and what is required in business and industry. Tristan, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I would just sort of follow up on what Beth was saying about, because I have, as I said earlier, I have a humanities and social science background, and one of the things, in terms of accessible training, I'm most interested in, and we talk about a lot, is there's a lot of humanities and social science researchers at Manchester, and you don't often see them turning up to research data management training or some of the data stewardship events we put on. And I'm thinking all the time of how can we engage people in this area of research community at Manchester to come to our events and access our training, because I know, from political science background and a history background, that there are a lot of people, when I was a PhD student in that department, who used quantitative data methods, lots of kind of data-heavy, who follow like a scientific method to humanities and social science research. And sometimes I'm even seen surprised by people in the open research movement who don't think that's the case, you know, because there's even that kind of attitude. So some of the things we've been thinking of doing, we've this year launched our own version of Lancaster's Research Data Conversations type series. So we're on the second one of them, and one of the things we're really keen to do is not make it a STEM thing. I see the Research Data Manager for Lancaster just enter the room at the back there. shout out to Jenny. And we're really keen for that series at Manchester not to be seen as just a STEM thing.
Yeah.
We want humanities and social science people to come because we know they have research data, and we know
but they don't always, right? Because they just have stuff.
They have stuff.
They have
yeah.
stuff.
And but even so many of them have like what we would call, you know, data in the STEM. There's not this split.
Yeah, it's a language thing as well,
which is
isn't
completely
it?
artificial.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're doing is we're in the process of trying to find someone in humanities and social science to do one of these research data conversations and potentially host it at the John Rylands Library, to be like, hey, you know, humanities researchers, this is a research data event, this is happening at the Rylands, we're not doing it at the Science and Engineering building, you know, research data is relevant to you.
It feels like it should be question time.
Yeah.
So I'm aware that we've only got 15 minutes. Sorry, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, I just think that so far, I think a lot of discussion is accessible as in fair.
Yes.
But actually, for me, the bigger problem is the fact that some of how we do that is not accessible in the other sense of being accessible to all of our potential users everywhere with verifying needs. And I think that is something that we probably don't unpick enough.
Yeah, probably time for an after-session discussion, though, yeah? Could we go to Slido so I can see if there's anything else that's on there? Because I can't work out how to operate a computer, because clearly this is a do as I say, not a do as I do. Thank you very much. Look, without no hands. Right, okay, this is quite interesting ones. Let's look at that one at the top, which is how do you facilitate peer learning? And as a person who's worked quite extensively on the trainer-trainer programs, I think that's quite important, that if you can get people to take all the skills that they've got, their understanding of their specific discipline or their specific research group, and do training within there. How do you address those very, very specific needs?
Shall I have a go?
Yeah.
So, I mean, kind of leading on from some of the stuff Kirsty was saying earlier, in libraries, I think there are less opportunities in particularly RDM for peer learning, because often you might be the only person within the team who's actually the kind of expert on that, so there aren't that many people to kind of learn from. I have done quite a lot of kind of specifically taking librarians and teaching them to be RDM people, so I think of it as peer learning because I'm an RDM person and they're an RDM person, but it's not really. It's top down because I'm also the head of the library. But one of the things that I do quite a lot is kind of, if, for example, I'm trying to get someone to learn how to do a data management plan review, I will do one and show it to them, and then they will do it and show it to me. And it's kind of taking the thing that they do in the NHS, which is like see one, do one, teach one. And I think that kind of thing works really well, particularly when you don't have very many people. So we can't put in let's have a journal club about it, let's have a big, a group discussion, because there's probably 2 people. So that's your peers.
Yeah, so one of the things we do is we have a termly teach and code social. So we get people that teach the same things as us across the institution together once a term. It's a mini seminar series, and we hear different things. So part of my job is teaching our RDM professionals to be good educators as well, and that is kind of a peer learning process, and we have a pathway for that. But it's very important that we learn from each other, really. But then in how we teach, we always encourage pair programming as very much as a key thing, and that discussion as part of the teaching. So we build it into the learning experiences as much as we can.
Yeah, I know that when the trainer program, there's a wrapper that was delivered so that you can effectively have an entire day of pedagogy presentation skills, and then you drop in the hour block of content so that people are able to say, all right, this we're going to do about research data management, this we're going to do about whatever, and then they've got a day to deliver those workshops. And I think that can be quite useful in this kind of peer-to-peer environment. If you give people the time and the skills, you're upskilling them to be able to develop and deliver their own training and give them the time to do that. That can be a really useful way of embedding that training within different departments and projects. Yes, anyone else want to come in on that?
Yeah, so our project is slightly different. So basically, because we provide service for the whole university and we have local HPC cluster. So basically, we think rather than just we directed to just provide training to the like a new user in a research group, it might be better, and so we can facilitate, and in the research group, we can find a person with relevant experience and in this area, and they will talk their own language, and so so for this experience, and we can just provide more support, and they can pass on the relevant information to them. So basically, so if we can build like a network like that for each research group, each department have the relevant knowledge and skill, they are in a better position to support their own research and students. That's what I think. It might be a better way, and especially for like the MS big data and HPC students. So we talk to the supervisor, to the tutor, and so how the users will need to be do, and for how to submit job or something like that. And so that's really helpful because they would more like to listen to what the supervisor tells them, rather than from us, and so from the administration way. And but if they get knowledge from the supervisor related to HPC and related to the job submission, and they will regard it like, oh, this is really like knowledge, and so just it's part of the course content or something like that. And so other than just from outside, and maybe this just maybe administration task or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm aware that we've got some interesting questions coming in as well. Is there anyone else who could quickly, in 30 seconds, sum up that peer-to-peer thing? Skylar, Tristan, nothing?
No, you can.
No?
Next one if you want.
Covered?
Yes, the next one.
Okay, next question. So, some juicy ones there. Let's look at my people, the neurodivergent disability people. How do we think we can change the way that we address this? So that question is, what resources and training are available to DRI folk who develop or deliver training to help us make things more accessible for people with disabilities, neurodiversities?
So I have a training pathway for our people to trainers, and part of that is some of this stuff embedded in there and that encouragement, but it's also addressing what we said. So I was in Edinburgh last week, and a big thing that came up is that actually the code along default that we do in the carpentries really does not work for an awful lot of people, and that there are different ways of doing that. And I think exploring that and sharing that and having that open conversation and being flexible with it is a really key thing. And that is one of the things I'm working on. I'm working on this project for the University of London. I'm actually looking at their online modules and actually how they deliver that and the digital accessibility implications of what they're doing, and talking directly to students to make that better. And I think it is having the open, honest conversation, going that, yes, in theory, this is what we've been taught to do and this is the right thing, but also knowing that it's not. But then the work that I do outside of work, I work with a charity called Kith and Kids. So I spend a lot of time with adults with learning disabilities and autism, and every single one of them is different. So there is no one fix for this. And I say that all of this work is Isha's staircase. All the time we're adapting and adjusting and tweaking things. And I spend a lot of time talking to our digital accessibility team. I try to talk to our colleagues about this and kind of just looking at how we tweak what we deliver and how we deliver it to make sure that it isn't harmful to people, because what we are causing if we get this wrong is we are causing harm in multiple ways.
Yeah, and I think the delivery thing is one of the important things. That's the one thing that we learned as a result of lockdown, is that some of this stuff we can do online, but sometimes if you put everything online, it makes it really difficult for people to follow, because you are not in the room in the same way that you would be. But then when you are in the room like this, at the end of day 3, start of day 4, having been sat for this long, that's also something where you think sometimes you might just need like to change things up a bit, or a bit of a time out, or just because it's quite an intense environment for anyone, let alone people who might struggle with light, noise, sound, whatever, yeah? Does anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely want to echo that thought. So basically, what we do is like provide like easy to access and like hybrid environment, and also just let all the attendants just feel just relaxed. And so we introduce like a research computing clinic. So anyone, if you have any question, and so you can just drop in to that session. It is hybrid, and so it is quite just informal and relaxed environment. And so if sometimes we just maybe with a few people, and so we can, if they have any question, and so we can direct answer them. And also just in every session we gather just capture that need and provide some kind of a short training session next week or next month. So with this way, so because even with like this environment, it looks like quite flexible, but still a lot of people maybe feel don't want to stand up to speak out. But like a less formal environment, and so we encourage them to just take it easy, and so speak directly speak to us, and so it's really helpful. And so some new PhD student, and they just international students, they just come here maybe within 1 week. They feel quite just welcome, and so feel also just reflect the university friendly environment to welcome international students.
Yeah. Beth, Tristan, I'm aware that library services, we tend to have quite a big thing about accessibility.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you'd like to add to it? I saw Tristan.
Yeah, just very quickly, I think sometimes it's important to recognise that even if you're delivering and creating the training, you might not be the experts in accessibility and learning. And the University of Manchester Library and our research data management training, we co-create new sessions. So I'm developing a new session on research data management and data stewardship at the moment, and the formal process is to co-create it and refresh sessions with our teaching and learning librarians, who are, frankly, more pedagogy experts than we are, to ensure things are accessible and and we deliver it in an accessible way. So I think it's thinking about, well, what other groups and other experts that you work closely with could you co-create this, and with peer review content to ensure, because I think if we did it on our own, it wouldn't be as accessible as it could be. So like if you've got a teaching and learning department in your library, maybe give them a call.
Yeah, and also, as we know, some of this content that we all spend our time embedded in can be a little dry at times.
Yeah. Are you suggesting research data management training
it can be a smidge dry.
Can be dry.
A little bit.
If I can just jump in as well there. I think one of the really big keys here is flexibility. People can quite often, I find that often, you'll go to a webinar or something about, how to teach to neurodiverse people, and people will be told, oh yeah, do this thing, that will really help people. And it's like, even within one condition, that will not necessarily be the case. And I think we just need to make sure that we're really flexible and have different ways of teaching things. Put on a course that is in person, but also have one that is asynchronous online thing, so that some people can do that.
Or even in smaller blocks. Right?
Yeah, absolutely, that's great. Things, do a bite-sized thing. Just a kind of case in point, anyone who's been on my table will probably have noticed that I've been drawing these kind of algorithmic patterns, because without a PowerPoint presentation, I can't hear what anyone's saying. because my auditory processing is quite slow, and so if I do something at the same time, then I can actually hear things. But on the first day, I didn't kind of think about doing that, and actually I missed an awful lot of the content. But I know that the not putting the PowerPoint up came from the best place, because many people find that very kind of overwhelming or boring or whatever. And so I think there's just this thing to think about. Lots of people will go into training and think, oh yeah, this really helps me, so let's do it this way. But actually, you've got to think about there may be someone else in the room that is completely the wrong way of doing it, and we're all just so different.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is as well that many people will come up with lots of different strategies, and some of it is that in the case of neurodivergence in particular, self-disclaimer here, clearly on waiting lists for all sorts of things, but both my children are ADHD and are autistic. And I think that it's a boy and a girl, you treat them very, very differently, and they work out their own strategies for getting through the day. So having a greater awareness of this kind of stuff, both in terms of training, in terms of line management, and also in terms of the comfort level of people who then might have to do a little doodle all the way through. That kind of acceptance makes it a lot easier for neurodivergent people to be able to get by in the workplace. Yeah, that's my little political stand done for the moment. I did notice that there was one question which I now can't see, which was about how do you cope when you're trying to deal with training to arts, humanities, social sciences? Because, as we said earlier, when I've gone out to train arts and humanities and social sciences, they don't do data. Yeah, they don't have a spreadsheet, they don't have anything like that, so therefore they don't do data. So whenever I approach them, I say, as it was alluded to earlier, that stuff that you've got, that stuff is data. So how do you look at that kind of with the training of a different audience?
You've got to come to people with the language that they understand. So it's like that thing about the stuff. So the English literature department has always been my favourite department. I love working with English literature professionals because I think you have to really, really desperately want to be a researcher in order to get that far in that field.
Yes, yes.
Biology, you kind of fall into it. English literature, if you want to do that, you've really got to care. And, you know, if people are showing up to these things, they do generally kind of want to be doing the right thing. If you can look at what they're doing, what their drivers are, you know, what's important to them rather than what's important to you,
and how does it map onto what you've got.
Yeah. Come to it from that point of view. Don't go to it with your terms. You know, you have to let go of your own language and think about how they understand it. And I think actually then it's not difficult to. People do want to kind of do the right thing, jump in. They don't want to lose their stuff, you know. They do want to be able to use it in 5 years' time. They do want to understand how it's all organised and things. It's just that, yeah, if you go in with a very kind of computer science, data, also watch out for the word coding, because in qualitative disciplines, it means something entirely different.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think as well as that idea that now that there's that intersection, all the digital humanities stuff, you're going to get some of that coming in, and it's finding that common language that you can speak.
Yeah, I was going to say some of that. So one of the first times I encountered NVivo, I think I was just absolutely horrified. And my colleagues went, it's just not numbers, is it? And I was like, oh, it's really not. But then my research is in education. I've done an awful lot of qualitative analysis, and coding for me is words and phrases and things in that kind of context, and words in context and stuff. And I do a lot of mixed method stuff now. So I think it's that bit of remembering how horrified I was the first time I kind of did qual, and going, they're probably going to be the same with us, because yes, I've done a lot of stuff around some of the social sciences, which are quant. I've taught people to do stats in Excel, and I've gone, please don't ever do this in anger, because we can't verify what you've done, and kind of gently encourage them to do reproducible things. So I think it is learning that language that I guess I'm fortunate now in that my research is social science and my degrees are computer science. And people have said that I'm very much a humanities person for a computer science person. And I can wear both hats.
Obviously,
a bit,
let Skylar get in here as well. I do think sometimes you have to be careful with using words like reproducible when talking to humanities people, because, you know, my research, and I know a lot of other people's research, you know, especially in politics and contemporary history and stuff, it's not designed to be reproducible.
But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be, though, right? No, because really the more interesting thing is finding out if the same things exist somewhere else.
Yeah, but some humanities research, the word reproducible, I can even say it, it's not going to mean the same thing to someone who does political science quantitative methods. They will understand what reproducible means. But if you go to a history department, and I was partly history and politics, and you say your research has to be reproducible, they will look at you like you're completely mad. And it's about trying to speak their language and use their terms they understand, because if you go, say, open science, reproducible, transparent methods, historians are just going to be like, this is not for us, because it doesn't mean the same thing. So I think it's just about thinking about the language that you're using with, what type of audience and what type of humanities and social science you're talking about, because it's not all.
Yeah, some of it's about the methodology that is
It's
used,
about
right?
the methodology,
Yeah.
because my methodology that I did for my research is not designed to be reproducible, and lots of history stuff is not meant to be. It's not the point. So it's just about approaching it in a certain way and thinking about your language.
Skylar, did you want to pop in?
Yes, I think that's a very excellent point about the language. Like we are talking in very different languages in each discipline. Like for the reproducible questions, like in social science, because they use very different method. Like most of us use quantitative method, but some social scientists, they may use qualitative method, which means they do interviews, they do the observations, etc. When they do interviews, for instance, they interview the top managers, they interview the adults, it's very difficult to make sure it's reproducible, because if you ask the questions the second time, you may get different answers. Yeah. So, but the transparency, I think no matter the disciplinary, the transparency is really important. Even in social science, we make the document about the audio document or video document to make sure it's transparent. Yeah. And then if we get back to the question about the wider audience, and I think some panelists mentioned about collaboration. I think collaboration is very important, because everyone in this group, they may do different work, they may be responsible for different parts. For instance, like some senior scholars, like in business school, or I did my bachelor in psychology, like in psychology school, many of the senior scholars, they never touch the data, they never touch the analysis. It's always the junior scholars and the PhD students who do the data and do the analysis. So I do feel like the PhD students and junior scholars are really important, because they are the bridge between different disciplines. They can always learn the method quicker than the senior scholars. So I think, yes, it's collaboration.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the way forward. And also, it's one of the ways that we can get strength in this stuff, right? Because then everyone's able to, that is effectively your peer-to-peer, if you're doing that.
Yeah, and I say on that language thing that open science is massively problematic. So we have an open science and scholarship thing, and science is being used in that Latinx term of knowledge, but that does not translate, because everyone tends to think about kind of STEM-based science. So even that within our institution is massively problematic, and what that means, and having that bit of, it's about transparency in methods. And that's kind of that encouragement. And there was actually a talk about the reproducibility doesn't count for humanities, but it's meant in a different way when we talk about it in that sense. It's about that transparency of methods, and kind of going okay, I can see how you got to where you got, because you've been transparent about how you got there.
Methodology, I mean, I might emphasis on, like, humanities people, like, I mean, a lot of that research is kind of interview-based, and obviously that's data, and you think about maybe more of an emphasis on, responsible data storage or something, or where are you holding these interviews, how are you documenting them, those kind of things, rather than approaching it like that. Because I think probably, I was talking about it to someone else, there's a news story recently about the singer Ray losing all the lyrics for the songs for her new album, because she left them in the back of a car which got stolen. And I think, well, that's qualitative stuff, that's like written down stuff. And if only she'd had a data management plan.
Yeah. Or a data steward.
Or a data steward. But then I thought, well, that could just be someone's interviews. Yeah. That gets lost.
And we know that has happened. Right?
Yeah.
Every institution has had an instance where they're like, what do you mean we put that in a bin outside? Somebody put the wrong thing away. Yeah. I'm conscious that we've only got a few more minutes now. So if we take and I think this has been a theme that's come up on all of the roundtable discussions. is about the communications channels. How do we talk to people? How do we get out there and speak about the kind of training that we're doing, or whether it's how do you get people into the profession? So I think if you could just give me 1 minute each, this is like, 1 minute thesis, 1 minute each on communication channels that are underused that might mean that we can reach a wider audience.
Get to where people are.
Yeah, go to events that aren't typically in your discipline.
Yeah, go to, I think, different interest group, and every department, they have own like interest group channel. Yeah.
And I think there are also some like interdisciplinary community, and for the interdisciplinary community, each discipline experts can better connect with each other and understand each other better.
Yeah, I would say, I think, post-COVID, I think maybe we've stopped doing a lot of the kind of meeting researchers at their events. And I think definitely at the library, in terms of our open research stuff, we've stopped doing that. And one of the things we want to start doing again is pooling and identifying where are the events that researchers are going to be at, and not expecting them to come up. Because sometimes what we used to do is just set up a stall somewhere and flag researchers down like they didn't have anything to do. And I think we're thinking a bit more about, okay, where do we know there's going to be loads of PGRs and academics? Go there and try to communicate and, deploy our people skills rather than expecting everyone to just read emails and Teams messages, which sometimes they probably don't.
And does anyone from the audience have any suggestions of where we could go?
I was just going to say that people also don't necessarily know that you exist, so we actually got forgotten about internally on a mailing list by people listing professional services.
Oh, there's two.
Oh, I was just going to say, sorry, I'll stand up.
Before you get shouted at, to stand up, yeah?
That with arts and humanities, I think the really key point that I found is that with discussing with them about data ethics, and so if you can get them at ethics committees or ethics application stage, that's quite good.
Yeah.
This relates to the question we had from the previous panel about everyone's favourite conference. Has anyone ever been to the academics conference when you finished a project with someone or a consultancy with someone? Have you ever reported on that, not just to your own team, but to their colleagues at their conferences? Because I did that once and everyone was amazed, going to a seminar in the physics department and saying, we've done this with RSEs, with DRI people, and talking to the physicists about it, with the physicists standing next to you saying, this was great, they were really nice, it really helped my research. So I think doing that more, going into their departments once you finished a project and telling all their colleagues how great it was really nice.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the things that we've lost as a result of the last 5 years. Yeah, we just don't seem to be out beating our heels on the street and going in and seeing people in the places where they exist. And there was one more question there, yeah?
Yeah, more of a point really, that not just...
Is that less of a question, more of a comment?
But just in answer to the communities, that it's not just the researchers' domain kind of events that I found really important, but actually going and meeting the stakeholders who they're impacting.
Yeah.
So we work with schools, so I went and had the opportunity to go and actually present our work to school pupils, and that really jumped the gap of understanding why we were doing things, and I found that.
Yeah, brilliant suggestion. Well, I think we are pretty much...
Kirsty,
oh, no, this one. You're hiding. Are you hiding?
I'm hiding. Hi. So the one thing that I have seen popping up more and more is community managers, especially for large-scale supercomputers or anything like that. They have been kind of getting together, I've been noticing, because I've been asked, and I know other people have been asked too, about how they can speak to people across different disciplines. They may be a wonderful single source to get multiple things done. So you might need to consider or find out, does your team have a community manager?
Or even your university, because I know the UK Reproducibility Network's got people that are in that kind of role, so they may have those networks and lists of email lists and people and places that you can go to.
We have that exact network at Manchester here. So you'd probably call me the community manager for data stewardship, and we have a network of the community manager for the Python group and the R group and research software group. So when we do meet together, so setting up something like that might be a good idea as well.
Oh, so there you go then. There's the next career progression pathway for DRI community managers. And with that, I will say thank you very much, because I believe it's time for us to have our break ready for the afternoon sessions.